into the games, jumping.
Jump up, and go. Todd and Joe Morning Show. Yeah.
Joe.
It's the Todd and Joe Morning Show. Todd and Joe Morning Show. Morning. I'm Joe.
I'm Todd. Welcome.
And welcome to the Todd and Joe Morning Show. Way to start your week off right. And once again, we are coming from the past to the future you.
Ooh. Speaking of past, future past, because technically I'm going to talk about something where we're recording is in the future, but when this will be viewed will be in the past.
Whoa.
Every stoner was just like,
whoa.
What?
No, every stoner understood that, actually.
As we record this on the 7th of June, tomorrow, as most of you nerds know, and if you don't know, you're not a fucking nerd, but we still love you. Tomorrow is the 40th
anniversary.
Let me say it again. 40th anniversary of the almighty, everything that mostly surrounds me, Ghostbusters. So I will definitely be watching it because, I mean, there's never not a reason to watch Ghostbusters, but on their 40th anniversary, they should watch it. Now, I don't know if you have anything crazy going on tomorrow. If not, I can do it myself. But it is also Ghostbusters Day in New York City, in Los Angeles. There's a lot of shit going on. There's anticipation that Hasbro is going to release some new toys or a toy line of some sort. Jason Reitman's going to be talking. They threw up something the other day about the animated series that's going to be on Netflix. So I don't know, maybe they will have an actual date that is going to start, a trailer for it. Who knows? They could be like, hey, guess what? Next Ghostbusters movie comes out in 2028. It's, you never know.
You really think they're going to take 4 years?
You never know.
No, I see it like the end of 25, beginning of 26.
But if it was to take time to make something of a good quality, I'm okay with that.
Oh, me too. Absolutely.
But speaking of Ghostbusters, we there's a podcast called Fate, Luck, and Karma from the West Midlands Ghostbusters of the UK.
What? This British? Now, are they Ghostbusters?
Kind of, but a little more cheeky. Ooh. I guess, to use one of their terms. You like that?
Oh, like that? Bloody hell.
Funny guys. It's good. They're in their second season. I think they're up to like 27 episodes between the first and second season. Awesome. You can check them out on like Spotify. They do have a YouTube page, but it doesn't seem to be super updated, but still they're out there. Facebook, you check them out there. But it is a funny podcast. I was listening to the second episode today of season 2, where they gave us, the Niche Nerd Network, a shout out as well. So thank you guys for that. But definitely check them out. They are funny. It is all things Ghostbusters. But yeah, dude, they're a riot. I was laughing pretty hard this morning listening to that episode. So yeah, check them out. It is Fate, Luck, and Karma from the West Midlands Ghostbusters of the UK.
Bloody hell,
and also because this is a 80s 90s show in general, something real quick from a 90s band that is still kicking around. We still go see them as much as we can, but 311 put out a new song yesterday and video. Ooh. And it's actually really good. Not to be like, the rest of their stuff isn't good, but they've had, in my opinion, musically ups and downs of style for me. But one of my favorite bands since the 90s. They're a great band, fantastic band live. One of the best shows I've ever been to, and I've seen them numerous times now, numerous times. One of the best ones, them, Gym Class Heroes, and The Offspring. That was a good show.
I saw Gym Class. Gym Class is awesome. I love Travis.
Yeah, and The Offspring, man, that's a band I've wanted to see since I was a kid.
Oh,
And basically they're still punk rockers. They're just old now. That was it. But yeah, new
their
311 song, a
Americana
video.
CD,
What's that?
their Americana CD was like the soundtrack of my like 8th grade, beginning of 9th grade, before like new metal took over my musical choices at that time. But
Yeah.
I just re-listened to that whole album like not too long ago, and it's like one of those albums you can just play all the way through.
Oh yeah. See, for me it was Smash.
I love
And
Smash
then
too.
Smash, I went backwards because there was just Ignition before Smash,
Right.
which was an amazing fucking album. And then I enjoy not as much as Smash, but Ixnay on the Ombre.
Okay, I'm like in my head, I'm like, well, like Ixnay and the Ombre, wasn't that the name of it? And then
Yep.
I'm like, no, and I didn't want to sound stupid, so I'm like, but that's what I was just about to.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. Like honestly, like the Americana is where they started slipping off for me. And again, that was because I was younger and I was like punk rock, and MTV got a hold of them. And then all of a sudden it just started to be MTV, you know, and then everybody's like, well, the Offspring, you know, and it was just like, okay, they kind of, I don't want to say went away from like the punk roots, but they weren't as punk as Ignition, Smash, and Ixnay when they started to get to Americana, because it was more MTV, like fucking Green Day's Nimrod. You know, everything going up to Nimrod, but then that became a very MTV kind of heavy album, and it just kind of like, that was where Green Day.
You know who you sound like right now?
Who?
You sound like Heroin Bob.
Oh, Heroin Bob.
I'm like, Todd was that dude that once somebody went mainstream. Nope, they sold out.
Dude, Limp Bizkit, love Limp Bizkit, love Limp Bizkit. I mean, I still enjoy Limp Bizkit, don't get me wrong, but it went from, I was one of the, larger group of people that was listening to them legitimately before most people even knew who the fuck they were.
Right.
And then Faith happened. Yeah. And then
Nikki.
Faith happened, and that's when people started to pick up on it. And then, Nookie and Break Stuff. And, it just kind of, again, for me, will I, listen to those first couple albums? Absolutely. But anything really after that, it just kind of, the problem with record labels that are owned by corporations is that you have to change with the sound of the industry.
Yep.
Whereas you listen to NoFX, who are on their own label, every single album they've ever done, which is a lot, pretty much all sound the same. But if you have that sound that captures an audience, what's the point of changing your sound? Because that's how you do lose audience. People get used to, hey, these 5 albums sounded like this, and then all of a sudden you sounded like this. There's no and that's what a lot of bands do, and it is unfortunate because that's the industry. It is, nope, you got to sound like this, or else your fucking label's, your contract's done and you're gone and you have nobody.
Right.
Even, like people, as much as they would ever them, the Insane Clown Posse. I mean, they were the only band to literally have an album released, have an album pulled, and kicked off a label in like 16 hours. Because supposedly nobody at Disney listened to, I want to say it was like the Great Malenko. But they both claim we gave them their shit. We gave them the album. We gave them like the lyrical blah, blah, blah. And if you look at them now, I would say if they were still on a corporate label, they wouldn't be doing music anymore, because they got kicked off that label and became their own thing and do their own thing now and own everything, their merchandise, their warehouse, their label, their studio. They are still producing music to this day,
Right.
So that is the problem. It's not that I'm like, oh, fuck the band. It's just like your music changed, and that sucks because you were so awesome for this period of time. And then all of a sudden corporate ass were like, all right, nope, this is the new sound, and if you don't sound like this, goodbye. There's actually an ICP song that they do talk about that. Like, they go through like different styles of music. If they were to do this style, what would it sound like? You know, and it was just funny yet terrible all at the same fucking time.
Right.
So yeah, so that's yes. I am. You know, somebody one day was like, "Oh, you're a fucking hipster." I'm like, the only way I'll accept being called that is if you put OG in front of it. Because I've been like that my whole life. I was like that before it was cool to be a hipster. Yeah. Like I'm just not a fan of most things mainstream.
Hipsters are punks with a pretty coat of paint on them.
Basically.
Yeah.
My paint's a little chipped, but it's still pretty. Anyway, let's jump back into video games.
Okay.
We were talking about last week. We kind of went through the systems we own, what our favorite, what got us into gaming. But yeah, so we decided, I think, that it's going to turn out to be a 3-part episode, possibly.
Yeah, I think the way we've been talking, yeah.
Yeah, you know, because there were consoles and so many of them, but then there was PC, and PC is a beast that's over here somewhere. Like, it's all PC stands alone, and that deserves kind of its own whatever because of, again, the evolution of PC itself compared to like console. And the games that PC brought us, that if it weren't for those games, you wouldn't have half of the library that you do today.
Yep.
But as of today, we are going to continue on our console video game chats. So I got thinking about, you know, we think about random things, being potheads and shit, and remembering when Mortal Kombat came out.
Yes, I do.
And the shit show. I think that was the reason for the game rating system, actually. Was Mortal Kombat.
I believe so.
Because it was brutal. Now you play the first game now and you're like, what the fuck is this compared to what they put out now? And you're like, what the fuck was that? But I do, you know, I remember playing that. My, you know, parents were okay with it. Not super thrilled, but when they start coming out like, oh, you can turn off the blood, they were like, okay, and then you're like, fuck that shit. Turn off fatalities, no. But again, that was going back to Nintendo Power, which I did look up the other day. Remember we were talking and I forgot to fucking mention it. We were talking about when Nintendo Power came out, and it came out in July, August of 1988.
Okay.
Is when Nintendo Power came out. So not long after the first Nintendo system was released, which, speaking of that, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you, see if you remember the first Nintendo commercial.
Oh.
Will it be you? Will your family be the first to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? Will you be the first to see, to touch, to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot? He follows the commands you put on screen to help you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt and Hogan's Alley? The first to build a library of game packs like Kung Fu and golf, even games like Excitebike that you program yourself. Will you be the first to get all this in one package? The Nintendo Entertainment System, where video technology is more than a game.
What the fuck was that robot?
So I do remember that. I never had it.
I don't
one of those
know.
things where, like, I don't even know if I ever really wanted it. But yeah, it was like, you know, I was supposed to, there's certain games that worked with it, you know, and you gave it commands and it would do things and whatever. And yeah, it was, you know, but I think it was one of those things that, you know, since that video games were new, you know, that was, you know, besides the Atari, that was the first like 8-bit console. Like, I don't know if it really took off like they wanted, that robot really took off like they wanted it to. But
What
yeah,
was his name? What was the robot's name?
Robbie. I think it was Robbie the robot.
Robbie the robot.
Robbie
Like,
the
what the
robot.
fuck was that?
I don't know, man. It was.
Dude, it looked like a kid's version of fucking the robot from Short Circuit.
Oh yeah,
Fuck
Johnny
his name.
Five.
Johnny Five, yeah. Like, it looked like Johnny Five.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. So we do another one. We did talk about, the Super Nintendo, which brought us 16-bit graphics and awesomeness. So,
Fucking
come on.
Robbie the robot.
Robbie.
When you decide to step up to this kind of power, this kind of challenge, this kind of flying, crashing feeling, when you decide to get serious, there's only one place to come: the games of Super Nintendo. No one else creates this kind of experience, because no one else creates these kinds of games. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Was that Paul Rudd?
Yes, it was.
What?
Yeah.
So it's funny you played that commercial, okay? So one of my all-time favorite games, and it's a racing game, is F-Zero, which they showed on the projector screen there. Did you ever play F-Zero?
Yes, I did.
That was my fucking jam. So, like I said, when we moved to Turkey, they got me a Super Nintendo. Well, the only games I had were Zelda, and then I forget the name of it, but it was like a mech fighter game, but you had to use the Super Scope for it.
Yep. I know what you're talking about. I never had the Super Scope, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like that, like I got the Super Scope because when they got me the Super Nintendo, my dad bought the game. The game must have been on sale or something, and then didn't realize you needed the attachment for it. And then he bought the Super Scope for me for like my birthday that year, so I could play. But those were the only two games we had. Well, we had taken a field trip into the city, and it wasn't far from where my apartment was in the city in Turkey. And what a lot of people don't understand either, especially they just do it with the disc region now, but back then there was a European and Japanese version of the console, and then there was the American version, and the cartridges were not interchangeable. So F-Zero. So okay, so we had gone on this field trip, and it was like a bazaar almost, and there's like these little different shop people that always gather at this place. And I saw they had an American Super Nintendo game there, and I'm like, oh shit! But I didn't have money on me. But this was maybe like 10 blocks away from where I lived. So we get on the bus, we go all the way back to the base, which was like 45 minutes away. Then I go home, and I tried talking to my mom into letting me go, and she's like, no, we gotta ask your dad, So this was on a Friday. So my dad says yes. So I remember walking all the way like back to this place by my own. So I'm like maybe 9, 10. And hoping that this guy is there, and he was. And I bought F-Zero for the equivalent of probably what was like $5 now. And went home, and I became a master at it. And I'm not really a big racing game besides F-Zero and then Double Dash, Mario Kart.
Mm-hmm.
Those, I always love those racing games. Any other racing games, I just couldn't get into it. Like, I knew dudes who had, like, the little steering wheels with the pedals, and I'm like, like, it doesn't work for me. I didn't find it fun. If I wanted to drive, I'd get my driver's license and drive,
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. And it's funny that you mentioned Mario Kart. I'll get to that in a second. But there was another game in there that was shown briefly that I believe is one of your favorite games. They did show A Link to the Past.
Yeah,
but you know what I noticed actually about both the Nintendo commercial and the Super Nintendo commercial? There was one key game lacking from both those commercials.
Mario.
Yeah. They showed Duck Hunt. And if I recall correctly, I think you could buy them separately, but for the most part, Mario and the original Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt came on the same fucking cartridge. But even Super Nintendo, like I remember when we got Super Nintendo, we got the bundle with the Mario All-Stars. So it was the original 3, the Lost World, and then Super Mario World, which you could buy Super Mario World separate as well. Right. But yeah, Mario, but then it seemed like after that Mario became like the predominant, in the 64.
Because I don't think at that point Mario was the spokesman for Nintendo. Because I remember,
that's true, yeah.
I remember there being a Nintendo block of cartoons very, very briefly when I was young, and they were trying to push this character Captain N as the mascot for Nintendo, Captain N, the Game Master.
Yep.
And it was this all-American guy with the Letterman jacket, but it had the Nintendo N on it, and he gets teleported to this world. And you had, who were the characters? There was I'll look it up.
I think a dog, if I remember correctly.
Possibly. I remember the bad guy being like an eggplant.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember though, like,
here we go.
But I'm pretty sure the Super Mario Brothers Super Show came out before that.
Yeah. Yes. And this
R.I.P. Captain Lou.
This was like a different block because it was Captain and the Game Master and then Zelda. So here we go. So we got Kevin Keene, all right, a teenager from Northridge, California, and his dog Duke, there you go, are taken to another universe known as Videoland when they are sucked into a vortex called the Ultimate Warp Zone that formed a television. To fulfill an ancient prophecy, Kevin is destined to become the hero Captain N, the Game Master, and save Videoland from evil forces led by Mother Brain from the floating world fortress called Metroid. By the time Kevin arrives at the scene, Mother Brain has almost succeeded in capturing the Palace of Power and conquering all of Videoland. Kevin, who in Videoland is armed with a zapper and a belt buckle shaped like an NES controller, and Duke appears suddenly on the other side of the Ultimate Warp Zone before the End Team, which consists of Princess Lana Deschain, the acting ruler of Videoland, as the first episode explains the absence of her father, the king, Simon Belmont, Mega Man, and Kid Icarus, none of whom show any confidence in Kevin's ability in the beginning. However, after Lana is kidnapped by the enemy shortly after Kevin's arrival, the reluctant group puts their differences aside to go on a rescue mission, where Kevin eventually gains the confidence of others. During Season 2, Game Boy, a human-sized supercomputer shaped like the console, joins the End Team. So you had Simon Belmont, who's from Castlevania.
Yep.
Mega Man. Kid Icarus. He had his own.
I never really got into those games, the Kid Icarus games.
And then Mother Brain from Metroid.
Metroid was the shit. That game was the first oh shit moment game, in my opinion. Because everybody was so hell-bent that Samus was a dude that when they found out it was a chick, people not lost their shit in a bad way, but it blew away the stereotype.
But I don't know if I still have it. I might have gotten rid of it. But I actually had Captain and the Game Master on DVD. Because I remember being so fond of it. And then I remember the Zelda cartoon. It was like a block. And for a while, Nintendo had like they almost like trade paperback comics of these characters going on different adventures.
Yeah, because Zelda was also that started on the Super Mario Brothers Super Show too. It's every Friday. Because if you go back and watch the old episodes of that, they'll be like coming this Friday, and it'll show clips from Zelda. But yeah, man, fucking Super Mario Brothers Super Show, that was the shit. That was just such, the cartoon was great, but like just that, like the live action of it, because it wasn't too ridiculous. It was ridiculous enough, but it wasn't Super Mario Brothers movie ridiculous. It was, I hate that movie. That movie could fucking burn in hell.
Oh, yes. Okay, so we're talking about this. Yes,
I fucking hate that movie.
Oh,
I even watched that movie Riff Tracks style, and it still was a terrible fucking movie.
Yes. I love that movie.
I can't. It was. It is almost impossible to do video game movies. Resident Evil did a very good job, to be honest with you. Doom was fucking horrific. Street Fighter was fucking horrific. Double Dragon was terrible. I enjoyed the Mario movie that came out recently, like the animated one. I thought that was actually
Sonic
well
ones
done.
have been great. The Sonic ones have been good too.
The Sonic movies are fucking good. But man, when they were starting to do that crap in the 90s, it just wasn't. The only thing that was the same in the game and the movie were names used, but literally character-wise, like, how am I supposed to, when I go through however many games, that King Koopa is this big turtle dragon thing, and then in a movie, it's fucking Dennis Hopper with, I don't know, a couple things on his head or some shit, if I remember correctly. Like, how am I supposed to, as a, someone at whatever age I was when that movie came out, be like, oh yeah, there's King Koopa, there's the Goombas who are these little mushroom-esque looking things that waddle around, and then you have these fucking dudes with tiny heads. Like, none of it coincided. Like, it just...
So I want to so I do have nostalgic memories because we went for my sister Andy's birthday that year and went and saw it. But I was just, so this was like my first experience, especially as a kid, because I must have been 7 when this came out. And it was the first time I know Mario, you know what I mean, at this point in my life. And it was the first time I had seen somebody take something and reimagine it. It was my first time that it ever happened. And that's something that's always very much interested me, is the way people can have reinterpretations and stuff. I mean, I do that stuff all the time in my head. I remember the magazine Wizard. Do you remember Wizard? Mm-hmm. They would run drawing contests and stuff at times. And I remember one that stuck out to me. A lot of them were like this, but it was like, reimagine the original X-Men. And like the Elseworld, what if kind of different versions of it, I've always liked. And it was a cool way for them to explain, because they took all the concepts and they just put a spin on it. And I'm not saying it's a good movie, okay, by any stretch of the imagination. I would say ahead of its time, because you see a lot of the reimagining stuff now, but you see it more with something that was established like in like the 50s or 60s being reimagined and a more modern uptake, which Mario wasn't retro at that point, but it was like a modern approach at, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I always thought it was cool. I thought it was a really cool interpretation. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, not two people I would have cast, but they both crushed it. Like, I always dug it. I love that movie. Like,
yeah, and then Leguizamo got all fucking bitchy when the new one came out.
Well, of course he did.
Oh, why didn't they whatever me cast? I'm like, dude, You were in a version of a Mario movie that really didn't go over too well. You are kind of just one of those 90s actors that it just, I don't want to say no one ever cared about, but you weren't in a ton of stuff that was like, you know, top level movies, man. Like, you just kind of, I think you do like voice acting and shit now. Like, get over it, man. Like, it was when Paul Feig, whatever the hell his name is, threw a shit fit when they put out, you know, the 3 Ghostbusters movies, you know, 1, 2, and Afterlife in a box set. And then he cried about it. It's like, dude, you made it blatantly clear that it wasn't the same anything as, you know, the OG Ghostbuster storyline. So why the hell should you be included in that? You know, like, you shouldn't be. You are not. You made it perfectly clear it wasn't the same world, universe, anything. Ghostbusters didn't exist. You shouldn't be included in a box set of a story that's continuing, you know, the original story. Right. So speaking of movies, and I this might be just like shit fucking quality, so hopefully it's not, but I want to see if you remember this movie, because it is semi-Nintendo related. Let's see here. This.
It's
$226.
well, we only have $8.30.
Do you know the movie?
What does that get us?
Oh, yes.
Corey's taking his brother Jimmy on a ride.
These 2 boys already traveled more than 80 miles across the state.
We've hired someone to find him.
What's his problem? He's just shy.
But Jimmy's got a secret
You got 50,000 on Double Dragon?
that could make this the ride of their lives.
Look at him. He's a wizard. He's headed for the video championship.
This guy.
What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just keep your power gloves up front, right?
With a touch of romance
I am not kissing a boy.
and a ton of trouble.
That's huge.
We're too late.
Sorry about that. You maniac!
They'll get there any way they can.
Jimmy! Here we come!
It's Jimmy!
Come here! Hey!
Now, what do you think you're doing to him?
I'll just let you can tell him to do what you want him to do. How about once you ask him what he wants to do, huh?
Now,
Video Armageddon.
it's going to take a lot of guts,
You can do it!
a little magic, and the wizard, Fred Savage. The Wizard.
Yeah, The Wizard. I got another movie I watched fucking via Riff Tracks, which made it hilarious. And of course,
Why don't you explain to people what riff tracks are?
so first, before, just because I was thinking about this, we own none of the anything to anything that I've been showing you. It's just old stuff related to what we're talking to. We don't own anything Nintendo, blah, blah, blah. I understand it's copyrighted, but we're not making money off this. So it doesn't really matter in a way, but we don't own shit to that. So, so Riff Tracks is, if you're old like us, there was a show back in the day that was on like local access in Minnesota that blew up called Mystery Science Theater 3000. And it was about, well, originally started as dude Joel and his 2 robots, Tom Servo and Crow, as an experiment, putting on what's called the Satellite of Love in space, and they get sent B-rate, C-rate, D-rate, X-rate fucking movies, just god-awful piles of shit as like torture. And they sit there and they make fun of the movies the whole time. So most people know it when you're like, oh, you know that show, and it has a silhouette of the dude and the 2 robots. Oh yeah, you know, that's Mystery Science Theater 3000. Voices changed over the years and went from Joel to Mike Nelson. And what happened after that were numerous things. There was Cinematic Titanic. There was another one I can't think of the name of off the top of my head. And then there became Riff Tracks, which is Mike, Kevin, and I can't remember the third dude's name. But that's what they do now. And it's literally just them picking on movies. I've watched many movies via Riff Tracks. I watched the Twilight series via Riff Tracks, and it was still terrible. And I mean terrible. I don't know how people really got into those fucking movies. You know, fucking sparkly vampires. Bill. Yes, Bill. Yep. So yeah, that's what they do. They literally have made a living for like 30 plus years now, making fun of fucking movies. And it is the most fantastic thing you'll ever encounter. And what they can do now is they can do like recordings, and then you like buy them. It's called like Just the Laughs or Just the Jokes. And then you sync it up with the movie, because a lot of movies are copyrighted, so they can't be selling the whole package deal. Older ones that are out of the whatever, they can do that. But yeah, it's just, you know, I grew up with just a very dumb sense of humor between like Three Stooges, Mel Brooks, etc. So the shit that they say and do. Plus, I've been exposed to movies that are just, there's a movie called Birdemic, which is one of the most fucking worst movies I've ever seen in my life. But I've seen them riff shit like House on Haunted Hill, a classic fucking Vincent Price movie, you know. But, you know, movies that like, I've never laughed so hard at Empire Strikes Back as when I watched your Riff Tracks, you know, Indiana Jones, all those. So that's what Riff Tracks is. Check it out. It's funny if you have kind of a dumb sense of humor, or if you ever find yourself watching a show and like talking over it and making fun of it. That's what these guys fucking do for a living, which just has to be awesome. So yeah, the Wizard, the Power Glove. Never had a Power Glove myself.
Did they actually make it?
Yeah, that was the thing. That was a no bullshit. That was a thing for the Nintendo.
I don't get the Power Glove. I don't know. No, I'm not doubting you.
No. I want to.
I wouldn't be able to play the game like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually manufactured by fucking Mattel. It was $89. So the introductory price was $75, which now would be equivalent to almost $200. Yep, it was for. I don't even know if it was for just strictly. It says for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The Power Glove gained public attention due to its early virtual reality mechanics and significant marketing. However, its two games did not sell well, as it was not packaged with a game, and it was criticized for its imprecise and difficult to use controls. So
it doesn't sound like a logical thing to, because like it takes two hands to run the controller, and if it's on your glove,
yeah. So the two games were released with specific features for use of the Power Glove: Super Glove Ball, a faux 3D puzzle maze game, and Bad Street Brawler, a beat 'em up game. Both games are playable with the standard NES controller, but include moves that can only be used with the glove. So essentially, they were still games you could play without it, but you could do like special things if you had it.
So for two games.
Yeah. Hold on. Oh, two more games, Glove Pilot and Manipulator Glove Adventure, were announced but never released.
Glove Adventure, huh?
Another unreleased game, Tech Town, is a virtual puzzle-solving in which the player moved a robotic hand around in a deserted space station type of setting, using the glove to open doors and to pick up and use tools. But yeah, so it was a thing, but it didn't last.
Yikes.
So
yikes.
Earlier though, you did mention a game, and I guess we'll kind of roll into the 64 because I feel like that was a big part of our lives as well. So you mentioned this game, and I'm gonna show you the trailer for this game.
You're about to walk in the most exciting journey of your life.
Fasten your seatbelts for a 360-degree burnout. Precision handling for 1 to 4 drivers. New Mario Kart 64. It really kicks asphalt.
Why are Nintendo commercials so like dark and eerie? Like all three of those commercials were like, well,
Okay,
oh,
so I'll make that up. In a way, this is funny. I remember this commercial. It was just, I mean, because of the way it was, and I know you'll remember it as soon as I start playing it. But it's kind of like brutalish, but it is a little more sunshiny, I guess, if you will. And I know you'll remember this one.
I do remember this one, Smash Brothers.
But kind of an upbeat, still like them beating each other.
Something's gone wrong in the happy-go-lucky world of Nintendo. Introducing Super Smash Brothers, where all your favorite characters go toe-to-toe in one 4-player star-studded slam fest, only on Nintendo 64.
I do enjoy how Pikachu just flies over fucking Yoshi both times and nothing happens. You never see him actually do anything. He just kind of like goes one way and then the other.
So that means we've had Smash Brother games now for almost 30 years.
Yep. But that one, again, I mean, you know, there was some fighting to it, but it was a little more upbeat at least with the setting and the background. So, yeah, I mean, we've all been there with Mario Kart 64, I think, playing it, fucking getting pissed at it, getting pissed at your friends, getting, you know, like the fucking heated competitions. My girlfriend still, like, we play Mario Kart, like, newer ones. She whoops my ass in those games now.
See, like, I loved 64, but Double Dash on GameCube was my jam. Like that, I liked the original Mario Kart, but something about Double Dash really just clicked for me.
I have to say, I was thinking about this earlier, and then I'll get back to my last commercial of a game that we all love. I never owned a GameCube. It went. For me, I had a 64, and then I had this little system by this little company named Sega called the Dreamcast.
You must have had every single game ever made on the Dreamcast.
Yeah, all like 4 of them, 5. No, I think I only had like 2. And that shit flopped hard, and then, you know, whatever. So I actually never, I think I bought a GameCube later in life, and it was just like, meh, you know, because it was like much later in life. Because after, you know, the Dreamcast had CD, but then I went into PlayStation, and then from PlayStation to Xbox.
Right.
But one more 64 commercial for you.
Ooh.
And this one was a game, again, that friends became enemies in the multi.
GoldenEye.
Introducing GoldenEye 007. And the first Bond adventure, where you direct the action.
You know how to use one of these?
Shot by shot by shot. Load a rumble pack and see how it feels when 007 meets Nintendo 64.
So that
was the game that made everybody want a 64.
Yes. And thusly, in my opinion, you know, that's another one that, you know, along with games on PC that kicked the door open for this, was one of the first like multiplayer that really like pitted each other more than racing, like Mario and shit. Most of your multiplayer games were racing.
So I think this is where we'll end the first half of the episode, and then in